Stay hot. Stay hot. The time is now. The lights are bright. Turning up the heat, doing it right. We're taking the stage. We're making a move. The energy's rising. We're in the groove. The mic's hot. Momentum strong. You're in the place where you belong. We're breaking boundaries. We're setting the pace. With PTKelsch leading the race. From the biggest headlines to the deepest dives. The StayHot Podcast is going live. All right.
And they're off. From the gates of Churchill Downs, the field explodes onto the track. Colors flying, hoofs pounding, chaos everywhere. And right there in the middle of it all, there he is. That's Kentucky Wildcats men's basketball, wearing the blue and white silks, carrying the weight of Big Blue Nation on his back. And listen to the crowd. You can feel it. There's not just watching a race. They're watching a statement. Headed into the first turn, fans start from Louisville. Fast start from Louisville on the outside. Indiana pushing the pace. Duke right there stalking. But the Kentucky Wildcats, they're not panicking. No. That's a controlled stride. That's patience. That's a horse that knows this race isn't won in the first quarter mile. It's won when the pressure hits. Down the backstretch, the field begins to settle. Florida trying to make a move. Texas jockeying for position. Tennessee creeping up on the rail. And you can hear the murmurs, where's Kentucky? Why aren't they surging? I'll tell you why. Because he's being ridden by Mark Pope. And right now, he's letting the race come to him. He's measuring. He's calculating. He's saving the just enough for the final turn. Because championships, just like the Kentucky Derby, aren't about who's loudest early. They're about who's strongest late. Now here we go. Approaching the far turn, the pace quickens, the crowd rises. Louisville still out in front, but starting to feel it. Duke trying to make that outside push. Indiana fading just a step. And here comes Kentucky. You can see it now. The stride lengthening, the power building, the moment when patience turns to pressure. Into the final stretch. It's a sprint now. Louisville digging deep. Duke right there. Florida hanging on. But Kentucky is flying. The Blue Silks are making their move on the outside. Big Blue Nation's on its feet. The noise is deafening. This is what they've been waiting for. This is what all the patience was about. The final furlong, Kentucky pulls even, then ahead, then clear. Because when the moment got big, so did Kentucky. And as they crossed the finish line, let it be known, this wasn't luck. This wasn't hype. This was timing. This was trust. This was letting the race come to you. Kentucky makes a huge splash in the StayHot transfer portal, Derby. And if you're Big Blue Nation, you're not just celebrating a finish. You're believing in what's coming next. Because if that's how they close races, then this season might just end in road. Welcome to the StayHot Podcast. I am your host, PTKelsch, and another edition of the StayHot. I thought I'd bring a little Kentucky Derby into the StayHot Podcast because if nothing else this weekend, the Kentucky Derby was an exciting race. They call it the most exciting 2 minutes in sports for a reason. And quite honestly, it feels like that 2 minutes lasts a lot longer when you're watching it and you're sitting there with bated breath. And, especially if you've got money on a particular horse, you're watching where that horse is. And, I just remember growing up in my family, my dad, that's one thing, we could bet on. We'd always bet something like 2 across the board, or we could pick a horse out to win, and it just seemed like it was just like almost like a tradition. And so that's what the graphic was about. And my little intro there, kind of putting teams who have done well in the transfer portal out in front. And, Kentucky, obviously right now, it's no secret, Kentucky's right behind. I'm not going to say right behind. Kentucky's a good bit distance behind. But the good thing about the portal is it's still going on. It doesn't end tonight. It doesn't end tomorrow. But Kentucky's going to have to do some things quick, fast, and in a hurry if they're going to, fill out this roster spot with pieces who I think can be the difference in a Sweet 16 or possibly, Elite 8 to Final Four range. I don't know if there's enough people out there in the portal. Obviously, if we were to get Momcilovic, him and somebody else may help us be what we might consider a Final Four national championship contender. But right now, it seems like as fast as these people are coming into the portal, as fast as they're getting snatched up. But the Drunken Mallard, let's go, man. Hope things are going well for you. I've talked about you on a few shows, so promoted your book a little bit. Glad to have you here. Donkfish, my man, what's up? Brian, what's up? Seems like we're getting kind of a late start today. I don't know if there's another podcast going on right now, but a lot of the people that are on here early on, aren't on here yet. So maybe, I always thought 9 o'clock was a good time just to kind of get everybody on here, just for the simple fact that most people are home from work. Most people are done eating supper. A lot of people are sitting down, probably just kind of relaxing before they go to bed in the evening. So thank you guys for being here. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything before we get started with the show. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I was kind of disappointed after we had that 5-hour stream on Thursday night. I think we went to about 2:30 in the morning. I had to get up, go to school the next day, went up, got to work, and it was kind of a long day, I'm not going to lie. And but we still had a good time, and the 5-hour stream is something that I'd love to do again. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but but I was kind of thought we'd have a stream maybe Friday or Saturday, and then no commitments came, no booms from Cody Feger, no really news at all. I saw somebody Saturday afternoon or whatever. I'm trying to think exactly what it was. Saturday afternoon, mid-afternoon, early evening, I got to thinking, like, we haven't heard anything in the Kentucky. So I got to looking on Twitter. I started looking and started searching, players to see if they committed somewhere. Started just thought it was eerily quiet. I think I should say eerily quiet. My man, me and you both. And I hope that next day you were grasping firmly by the legs of the damn it doll, because I wanted to. I'm not going to lie. But let's see here. All right. All right, let's get started. I was kind of waiting for a few more people to join. We're a little less than normal at this point in time of the show, but maybe they'll all come later on, where I didn't have to repeat myself 1,000 times. You know, when people come in late and they ask questions that we already talked about or discovered, but you know, that's part of it. All right, so first of all, since sticking with the Kentucky Derby theme, you know, we talked about that, just kind of mentioned it briefly with my little intro and then my graphic. But shout out to Jose Ortiz, the jockey of Golden Tempo, for riding just a brilliant race. And I don't watch a lot of horse racing. I wouldn't what I would consider to be an expert by any stretch of the imagination. You know, if I do anything, it's, you know, bet on it once or twice a year, and that's about it. But shout out to Jose Ortiz, because I thought he ran a great race. And one of the images that I think stuck with me the most was after crossing the finish line. You know, his brother was the jockey of the horse to finish runner up, I believe. So I thought that was pretty cool that they were able to, I guess, give fist bumps, you know, whatever, acknowledge each other in the races they ran. Also, shout out to Cherie DeVoe, first female trainer to win the Kentucky Derby. That's, you know, I saw something today that I think Golden Tempo, I think the purse was $3.1 million for winning the Derby. The owner got 10, or no, not the owner, sorry. The jockey got 10%, which was $310,000, which not bad for two minute job. You know, I'm talking about that day. I know the amount of work they put into it's a lot more than 2 minutes, but and the trainer, Cherie DeVoe, also got 10% at so that's $310,000. And then the owner of the horses got like $2.4 some million. And another paragraph down or so, they were talking about how just the overall value of that horse just from winning that race jumped up to like 25 million. Oh, I got you. All right, Jake, if y'all want to stay over there, and then you can come and join us later on. I get it. All right. I thought I'm not familiar with the catechin, but I try to pick a time when nobody else is on because I don't want to interfere with their audience. And, you know, I hope they feel the same about me. But, yeah, do what you got to do. I'll be here. You know me. If I got to be here 5 hours, I'll be here 5 hours, but not on a Monday night. Is it possible or just wishful thinking that we'll get someone who will surprise us as Anthony Davis did when everybody Patino, I think Patino does still have some money interest. We'll talk about this here in a minute. I just happened to see Jake's comment, and I wanted, you know, I hope people know that when I start my streams, I'm not trying to pick a time to, I definitely don't want to compete with anybody in Big Blue Nation for viewers or listeners or watchers or however you want to say it. I wish we could all support everybody. I wish somebody put together a graphic or something of times that people stream. I'm just so impromptu because I never know what my schedule is. And I don't want to get on here and ramble for 2 hours if there's nothing to talk about. You know, I know if you guys understand what I mean there, but the owner's almost 2.5 million. But what I thought was interesting was those of you that are from Kentucky, you may be somewhat familiar with Claiborne Farms in Bourbon County, which Bourbon County is, you know, the county adjacent to Fayette County. And Bourbon County is also in the 10th region, you know, where I coach in. So I thought that was a pretty neat Kentucky connection to where, you know, the first female trainer of a horse that wins the Derby was raised in some of his early days at Claiborne Farms in Bourbon County. I thought that was pretty neat. I really did. I enjoyed that. You asked my sister Unicorn a question the other night, and we already got off, but the answer to that question is yes, Taylor Swift concert. Yeah, I do remember that. If somebody gave you front row seats to a Taylor Swift concert, would you attend? I'll give you credit, Terry. I'll give you credit. We had a lot more no's than yeses that night. I do remember we were watching but we switched. Hey, you don't have to switch over to me. I'm serious. I wish I knew what time everybody was streaming, because I don't want to interrupt anybody else's stream or anybody else's audiences, and if I knew what time they were, what time they were going live, then I wouldn't, interrupt with their shows either. But I appreciate you guys, all of you, really do. I'm retired. My schedule consists of getting up and going to bed. Well, then you shouldn't have felt very bad the other night. Then you could have just stayed in bed till you felt good, Brian. But one of the things that I thought was interesting today that came out, and I don't think this is the first time it's come out, and maybe I just heard about it because Matt Jones has talked about it on KSR several times. I'm pretty sure I've seen it on Twitter a time or two. But, a couple things came out back to back that kind of shocked me. One of them was, a lot of the Kentucky fans, Matt Jones even joined our group chat last night in the Big Blue Nation Hall of Fame that we have. And a lot of times we sit there and say that, just take that Stokes money we had and, put it together and give it to this recruit, or give it to this portal guy, or give it to this international guy, or, we have all of this money just sitting there. Matt Jones kind of alluded to that there was money that was just Stokes money. So it's basically people were saying that they would give money, or they would donate to, I guess, the collective if Stokes came to Kentucky. But if he didn't, they weren't donating that money. So basically, all of us out there saying, me included, saying along the lines of Stokes money, there is, we don't just have all this money laying around that we can just go and offer, go give everybody. That there was what they called Stokes money. And I think there were boosters or, people with a lot more money than you or I, that were going to donate to the collective, NIL collective, if Stokes chose Kentucky. But since he didn't, that money never was donated. So, I'm not so sure we have just that Stokes money laying around. Now, I said this, a few other people in the group chat said it, then Matt Jones came back later on and said it. If there's another superstar in the portal that says he's coming to Kentucky, then, of course, he thinks or believes that Kentucky can still go get that money from those same people, but not going to be as easy as if we were getting, Stokes. But all this, I saw all that. Then, shortly after, I saw something that said JMI and UK were pursuing naming right deals for Memorial Coliseum. And that's what I was talking about. Like, I've heard Matt Jones talk about that before, and I've heard, I've seen it on Twitter before. And as soon as that was done, of course, you can imagine the heat and the comments and the flack that Big Blue Nation came out after that. But since UK had renovated, they'd kind of branded that facility the historic Memorial Coliseum, but they never really formally changed the name. We've always called it Memorial Coliseum, or now I've seen it even called the Historical Memorial Coliseum. But, if they were to sell the naming rights, that basically what it'll go to is what you see a lot of times in, professional sports. Matt Jones said it, and I saw it on the UK Athletics website, that it would be something along the lines of Historical Memorial Coliseum presented by or preserved by then the corporation or outfit that chooses to purchase those naming rights. And they're doing it to kind of generate some revenue, to make some money because, but there's also a clause in that contract that also says, Kentucky has to approve of all naming rights deals. and that's kind of a deal that Kentucky and JMI is in it together. But as soon as I saw that information, or not information, I should say, but as soon as I saw that tweet about the naming rights, I saw this come up from Oscar Combs, and Oscar Combs is the guy who, Cat's Paws, Wildcat News. But Oscar Combs is one of those guys in the state of Kentucky that, he speaks, a lot of people listen. He I would say he has a little bit of pull, or not pull. I don't know if anybody makes any decisions with Oscar Combs in mind, but you know what I mean. He's got name recognition. He's a popular name, face in Lexington, in the state of Kentucky. But he came out with, says, the day UK commercializes the revered name of Memorial Coliseum is the day I will no longer support UK or its leadership in any way in the future. This breaks my heart. Is everything for sale on the UK campus? Sadly, looks like the answer is yes. And, I'm going to agree with him. Sadly, at this day and age, at this time, I'd say for the right amount of money, everything has a price. And if you all been on Twitter today, there's been several different people saying, everybody was appalled last year that UK had spent $20 to $22 million on a roster, or at least that was the number that was thrown around. 22 million. We heard it all the time. We heard it everywhere. Kentucky underachieved for the amount that their roster cost. Kentucky spent 22 million and still can't make it out of the second weekend or first weekend, whatever. Kentucky can't even, win, or Kentucky's lost more than 10 games with a $22 million roster, which is kind of misleading to, considering the amount of injuries we had to some of the highest paid players on our roster. But they're already stating that 5 to 6 teams, or no, I think the wording was at least 6 teams. Yeah, at least 6 teams have spent anywhere between $20 and $25 million already on their portal roster. 20 to 25 million already. Which, that's a lot of money. And I know some teams are already done with their roster, so that's all the money they're going to spend. But, just think about last year when it came out about Kentucky spending that amount of money, and all the comments and things you heard from everybody, Kentucky fans included. And now we've already heard that there's 6 teams already who have spent 20 to 25 million on their roster. So, I thought that was an interesting figure too. So, commercializing Memorial Coliseum, I don't think it's something new. I don't think they're going to be changing the name Memorial Coliseum. I just think they're going to add to presented by, and whatever company or corporation spends the amount of money to have their name placed on it, is the way I believe. Yeah, I think we're all in the same boat, Brian. I think we all do. Well, Brian, good seeing you again. I'm not yet. Knock us down, but hey, we're getting back up. Well, and also heard Stokes wanted that. Yeah, he wanted the non-revenue though. The guaranteed money, as you say. Yeah. Pope doing Zoom meetings with kids in USA, but willing to travel to Israel on Kentucky dime to pursue international player. Pope has lost his mind. Hey, Pope may have hoodwinked us. How will teams sustain such enormous spending year after year? Well, I'm not so sure they can or they will. There may be years that you see certain teams, spend more in the portal, that they'll be good one year, then they may be mediocre for a couple of years before being good again. And I honestly don't. I think the times of, Duke will be able to sustain it because, as long as you put a winning product on the floor, Duke, UConn, like those guys have, players will still want to go there. Duke just signed a kid today or yesterday, I think, that probably going to be 11th or 12th man there that may be able to start for most places in the country. I think he's a 6'4" shooting guard. But, it used to be, Kentucky's name alone would get a recruit. You probably wouldn't have to sell the university or sell the team or anything like that much. But I think the days of just wearing the blue and white, the days of having Kentucky across your chest, nobody necessarily wants to play just because it's Kentucky now. How many times in the past 2 or 3 years, the last couple of years with Cal and maybe, the first 2 years with Pope, have you heard recruits or high school kids say that, Kentucky's their dream school, but then they choose somewhere else? And I've seen it multiple times. I think we'll continue to see situations like that. And the next one on the list that we may see like that is, Ryan Hampton. I think he's made it known that, growing up, Kentucky was his dream school. Now he's talking about reclassifying. Kentucky's in the mix. And now there's just so many other factors or things weighing in that the school doesn't really matter. It's what are you going to do for him as far as player development? Are you going to get him to the league? How much money are you going to give him? That thing. And it's kind of a sad situation because I think it kind of takes away from the whole college basketball aspect. But, I've said it from day one and I'll say it now. They ought to take one of the A's out of the NCAA because it's no longer amateur. Some of these guys in the portal, Badunga, and he's not the only one, but he's the first one that comes to mind. But, he's making more at Louisville than what some second-round NBA draft picks are going to make, and without a guaranteed contract. And I think it's made the college basketball product better as far as the the product that's on the floor, the competition, the competitiveness, the things like that. I think it's made better in the college game because there's a lot more parity, a lot more competitiveness. And, those guys like Owe who wasn't going to be drafted first round and maybe even high or lower second round was going to, I guess, instead of going to the NBA, he decides to come back for his second year of college. So we're getting better getting better players back for their sophomore, junior seasons or junior year, senior year seasons at the college level than what we were getting, because a lot of people were going one and done. If they didn't make it, they'd end up overseas. You get the next batch of freshmen in here. And in all honesty, Calipari and Arkansas is one of the few teams that are still going by that real heavy high school recruiting. A lot of teams are living and dying solely on the portal. And I think the very first show I did about Kentucky basketball and it was after the season had ended, I believe, but the very first show I did, I'd said I didn't think Kentucky or any other college team could live in the portal year after year after year after year. But, Michigan lived in the portal last year and won a national championship. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but it just seems like it's going to be harder and harder for teams to consistently get the big names out of the portal. And, and we've talked about, Pope, as far as his recruiting of the five-star athletes straight out of high school. We've not had much success with that under Pope. And that's a tough pill to swallow when with Calipari, every single year you are getting a top 2, top 3 recruiting class out of high school every year. But the portal is definitely going to be one of those things. It's almost kind of be like, I think it's going to kind of have to be like an acquired taste, honestly. I'm not 100% sure that, the way it changes year to year to year to year to year, if we're going to be able to, if we really like it or not, or, I don't think we can judge the portal one year because I thought the first year the portal was very good to us. And then last year, barring the injuries we had, I thought, we did okay in the portal. But, the one thing, it just seems like it's Pope's having, and we made this comment last show on the 5-hour stream, somebody, and I think it was Crash that kind of explained this whole JMI contract, things like that with us. But it's kind of like we're saying that Mark Pope's struggling to recruit because basketball athletes are having to sign a JMI contract. They're having to sign a Kentucky contract. And, football's doing well. Girls basketball are doing well. But Crash kind of mentioned how it's, about, out of all of UK sports, which players are the most recognizable. And it's probably going to be the men's basketball. Will Stein doing a great job so far, and so is Kenny Brooks. And I'm not going to say anything about Pope yet and what kind of job he's doing, if it's been a bad job or not, because I want to see what product he puts on the floor. And if it's anything like last year, then I'll be the first to tell you, I think, changes need to be made. But we've got players to commit to Kentucky and, May before, several Derby Day. I think Kevin Knox may have been a Derby Day commitment, which I know Derby Day's over now, but, there's still several people. And I think what we're seeing from not just Kentucky, but several other teams, LSU still only has a player or two on their roster. But all the players that you're going to see withdraw their name from the NBA, then it's the portal's going to kick back up again about, because it just, for Kentucky's sake, the one player we want may be one of the last ones to withdraw his name. He got invited to the combine. He's one of those, I think I've seen anywhere to where he's like 35 to 45, somewhere in that range, 38 to 45, somewhere in that range to be picked. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. Just recently, some of Kentucky's targets that they've been recruiting, have come off the board. And it seems like every day we're seeing at some point in time a Kentucky target, sign elsewhere. And I just, I think as soon as people hit the portal, every school in the country reaches out to them. Then the school's level of interest or, kind of changes as other people enter the portal or vice versa. And, for example, well, never mind. We'll talk about that here in a second. I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but some Obina Akizi, kind of surprised me. Everything I'd read here recently that he was going to follow in his dad's footsteps and commit to Maryland. He's a 5-star center that committed to PTKelsch in Louisville. So another one of these players that are 5-star athletic ability or 5-star talent, I should say, that Kelsey's getting down in Louisville. But I will say, excuse me, and this is something that you all may want to tell me your thoughts on too, because I'd love to hear it. That's what we're talking about, Brian. Pope's having trouble landing them, whether it's his relatability to those players or what. Pope's one guy that may have to live in the portal. He may not be able to get 2 or 3 5-star kids, but let me hear y'all's opinion on this. The Akizi, with Louisville has basically killed it in the portal. Their roster is expensive. They've got several players that are highly ranked. But tell me how this Akizi signing makes a lot of sense. Badunga's was the number 1 player in the portal, according to most people, and he's a center. So they didn't pay him his money to sit. They're not paying Akizi money to sit. Are they going to try to play 2 5s? Are they going to bump one to a 4? Then maybe the kid from Iowa, who he may not even start or whatever. Are they going to bump him to the 3? The kid, I can't think of his name, starts with an F, that he hit that game-winning shot against Florida in the NCAA tournament. I can't think of his name. Anyways, you know I'm talking about, the guy from Iowa that Kentucky had recruited some out of high school, I think, and he ended up going to Iowa. Well, then he transfers. He entered the portal this year after beating Florida in the NCAA tournament, transfers signed Louisville. I have seen some people say that they could knock him down to 3, but if they knock him down to the 3, that almost knocks Carter Knox out of a starting job, which I'm not so sure Carter Knox is a starter for Louisville. You know, I guess that's yet to be determined. And I guess when you have all those players, I guess, you know, it's a good problem to have, competition or so in the you know, in practice every day. Iron sharpens iron. And but I will also say that I just, you know, it seems like the approach that we've seen in the portal, to where you just go out and spend the most money and get the players regardless of fit, doesn't seem to be a very good approach. And that's kind of what I've read from national people about. You know, I've seen national people question Louisville and their signings. I've seen so, you know, when I say stuff like this is not just my hatred from Louisville speaking. You know, I would be objective in talking about the roster, but that's his name, Fulgaris. Yeah, I just, you know, if they move him down to the 3, that means they're playing Akizi and Badunga, both one at the 4, one at the 5. Fulgaris is a 6'10" 3. That would be 3 guys 6'10" or 11 or bigger, and then that would essentially probably knock Carter Knox out of the lineup, or they may bring Fulgaris off the bench. I just don't see Akizi or Badunga coming off the bench. I just don't see that happening. I could be wrong, but I don't see it happening. So let me know your thoughts on that, because I just don't see, you know, any kind of situation to where I felt like that was a signing that kind of fit with what they're doing in Louisville. I just don't really see it. All right, so Akizi kind of off the board. I just talked about how I don't feel like that's a good fit. Juke Harris withdrew his name from the NBA draft, and he's going to be attending Tennessee. You know, I'll go on the record right now on May 4th. May the 4th be with you, by the way, of 2026, and say that, you know, Tennessee's roster seems to be fairly loaded. If they don't make the Final Four this year, they may never make a Final Four, just from the simple fact that the roster that Rick Barnes has put together in Tennessee it's going to be pretty solid. I really do believe that. It's going to be a solid roster when it comes down to it. And Aaron Bradshaw, that's a name from the past, if you don't remember, played at Kentucky as a freshman. One of those guys that was going to be a one-and-done type player for Cal. Since leaving Kentucky, he's now going to be joining his 4th school in 4 years. He's leaving Memphis. He's leaving Memphis to attend Tennessee State, the home of the Tigers. Yes, sir. I'll be on here, Peanut. I'll be on here for a minute. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know how to compare Louisville to UK this year. But, yeah, Peanut, come back and join us, brother. But Bradshaw, it's going to be his 4th school in 4 years. And, oh, yeah, I'll definitely be back on here in probably an hour. Yeah, I'll definitely be on here in an hour. Texas is one of those guys. They've had a really good portal season as well. I just, you know, it's just so hard that, you know, when you talk about all these SEC teams that, like, talk about an SEC team making a run. The SEC is almost kind of like a gauntlet. It's almost like beat each other up all through the year or whatever. Then everybody, the walking wounded, headed into March. And then the one that kind of surprised me was this international player from UT Martin, this Andrea Bukimirovic or whatever. It said he entered the portal about an hour ago. I do some research on him, watch a few highlights, think, oh, yeah, he's nice. I see people saying Kentucky's reached out, Kentucky's interested. And then within an hour, I see he's committed to Boston College. I'm not so sure he was even in the portal a full hour before he made his commitment to Boston College. So I'm not even, I said that some Kentucky targets off the board. I'm not even so sure to consider him a Kentucky target. But anybody that enters the portal now or in the portal or international that don't have a team, or anybody that's in the portal that don't have a team, I consider a Kentucky target because we still got a couple roster spots to fill. I think we could fill 3. I'd be happy with 2 if we can somehow find a shooter and a backup big. And anybody that, if we can get anybody better than that, then that's just a plus. But I don't think we can go into the season with Reese Potter being our backup big. And I'd like, and we got about 8 players, I think, that are consistently going to knock down a 3. But I'd like to have that 45% shooter, that not one of those 33% that may hit 2 or 3 one game and not another 3 for the next 3 games, But the one question I had a few people DM me about this week, I should say. Of course, I had a few people reach out to me on Saturday wanting to know if I was streaming. Maybe I should have for viewership. For viewership reasons, I probably should have streamed on Saturday or Sunday, but I just didn't see any need to get on here and talk about things that weren't really the top, really anything to discuss. And honestly didn't want to get on here without some kind of good news for Kentucky because, we hadn't really heard anything since last week. The same thing we've been saying on here, other people are starting to say online about, the UK coaching staff and their transparency. They're not talking to the, fan base. They're not talking to anybody. Everything's, kept real close to their chest, which I don't think they have to tell Big Blue Nation every move they make. But I think when you're a fan base like us who's passionate and we're always starving for more, starving for, positive news, positive anything, we're starving right now. I think it'd be nice to address the fan base, but I read a devil's advocate side to that this evening when I was waiting to go live. Some guy said it's probably best that Pope don't go, that Pope don't do a interview or press conference or something now, because everything he says is going to be taken out of context. Everything he says is going to be looked at under a examined under a microscope or looked at with a fine-tooth comb or just simply going to get made fun of. So at this point in time, it may be best that Pope don't say anything, but I think it was March 22nd or March 23rd was the last time we've heard from the Kentucky coaching staff. And to me, that's just a little bit too long. I love your positivity. I don't know if I'm there yet. I think the only thing right now that can save him is Milan Momcilovic. I don't even think getting Ryan Hampton right now to reclassify and adding him to this roster could save Pope. Now, if he were to get Momcilovic and then add Hampton, then I think that becomes a roster that we need to pay close attention to. And then, we're always hungry for more, but it's like, I think Pope could take some of the heat off himself, and I know some of this fan base, it doesn't really matter what he says or does. It's always going to look like he is doing nothing if he's not talking to us or we're not getting commitments. And it's been a while, since we've heard anything good. But, just some of the future, or I'm not going to say future Wildcats, but just some of the players that UK is targeting still. And there's just a few of these things I want to talk about because there's just some of them I'm just not 100% sure, like what's going on. And, I've asked people, they don't know the answers. I've talked to people in our group chat who got a lot of knowledgeable Kentucky people who pay for insider information that I don't. So I'm always, listening to what they say, reading what they say, trying to find out. But if this name right here should sound familiar to you, but he is still out there, not on a team, a position of need for Kentucky. Devin Williams. You remember that name? I started thinking maybe Saturday night, like, where's Devin Williams? So I Googled him. I thought surely he signed with somebody and I'd missed him. But, where's he at? How come I've not heard anything regarding Devin Williams? He was one of the first few names, if you remember, one of the first few centers in the portal that we were kind of linked to. And I think we even Zoomed with him. I think it was even rumored that, it was only a matter of time before he even committed to Kentucky. Like he was one of those ones that was a lock. And I hate that word because nothing's a lock. Yeah, but he's still from Florida Atlantic. I'm trying to look and see. 6'10", 205 pounds. They got him listed as a power forward. Could potentially, at 6'10", 205 pounds, probably more like a 4. And maybe because we've got McBride. Maybe because we got McBride at the 4 now. Maybe they've kind of backed off. But, he's still out there. He's taking a visit. He's taking a visit to Arizona tomorrow. He's got UNC, Virginia Tech, and Oklahoma kind of on him really hard right now. I guess the question I would have is why did Kentucky back off? Was it because of Justin McBride? Was it one of those instances that he wanted to commit? We waited around. He lost interest in Kentucky while they were waiting on Stokes. That's not really true, Donk. Cam Williams will be like the 143rd ranked player in the portal. Now Marino was going to be a top 5. He was number 4. Cam Williams was 143rd ranked player in the portal, so I wouldn't consider that a big splash. But, he's one guy that we're kind of glad we kept and we wanted to keep, and I did see some guy asked today, should we look at this offseason a little bit different? Because although Marino played on our team last year and we kept him, is that like scoring a top 5 recruit in the portal? So, is it safe to say that maybe Pope has, but, my take on that is Pope convincing a Kentucky kid to stay at Kentucky isn't necessarily a big recruiting win in my eyes because I think he was going to stay there anyhow. I definitely think that's the consensus, Brian. I think we're starting to hear more and more of waiting on Stokes has cost us not just recruits at that time, but have cost us like future recruits as well. Yeah, but he's still – yeah, but there's still a lot of speculation there. He does have a high upside, but, we can't sit there and say that he's going to would have had a high value in the portal. There's guys out there that are still ranked 143rd that could definitely be contributing pieces. I believe that for sure. But I'm glad we have Cam. Don't get me wrong. I definitely think we've not seen the best of his game yet. We have not seen the best of his game, and I think he did show us before his foot injury. Excuse me. Bless me. Whew, sorry. Don't like to do that on stream, but I didn't see the other way out of it. But he And that's the thing too. Hawthorne doesn't really have a number in the portal just because he hadn't played a season of college basketball yet. He's kind of an enigma, so to speak. A lot of people know we feel like we may know what he can do because we're Kentucky fans and we see a lot of it. However, as far as what other teams, I think they just know that he was a top 30 recruit. I think he was a top 30 recruit in that class, and that would have been attractive to some suitors. But, yeah, I think so. I think a lot of it will be, though, if we can get if our guards can get downhill and can draw a defender to create some open looks for him, then, if he can attack the high closeouts, I think that's where he's going to live. He's a pretty good free throw shooter. And that's the one thing I think surprised me about our roster this year is the fact that everybody on our roster seems to shoot mid-70s or better from the free throw line. And I'm not so sure that's always been the case at Kentucky. And I know with Cal it wasn't always the case. But I definitely think Cam's going to have a good year. I think by the time the SEC rolls around, if he can stay healthy, we're going to get to see, we may get to see the best version of him. Also want to see, I would like to just, if we can get Momcilovic, I think I'd be okay with Hawthorne coming off the bench just because I'm not 100% sure because I've seen that question out there. What about if we get too many people at the same position? Who's going to, we got too many starters. Well, when you're coming off the season we just had, I don't know if there's such thing as too many starters. I know you can only play 5 out there, but I guess practice time will sort that out. It just seems to me that in order for us right now to get what I consider to be a Sweet 16 Elite 8 roster, we've got to have a stud, and we need to find somebody that can play the backup center position. We cannot go into the season with Reese Potter as our backup big. Nor can we Justin McBride's kind of undersized to have to guard the 5. I really thought, and I'm not going to lie, I really thought after our last stream that Santos was going to be one of those guys that we Mark Pope flying all the way to Israel, and kind of like Bryce said earlier, kids in the United States or kids in our own backyard we're Zoom calling with, and then we're taking a plane to Israel, and then we leave Israel without a commitment. Then when he gets home from Israel, we hear that LSU is kind of the top dog for Santos, and I know that LSU has a lot of room to play with because they have nobody on their roster. They have starting I guess their only roster is Mo Diabate. So they have starting spots that they can offer. They have a lot of money they can offer. So, if you're going to offer the same amount as Kentucky, but you can also guarantee a starting position, then obviously the player in question, in this case it's Santos, is probably going to be favored there. Also heard BYU was in the mix for him. Also heard of BYU, Kentucky, and LSU were kind of the ones in the mix for Santos. And I don't even know if Kentucky is still one of those guys in the mix. I mean, it's like I said, everything's so quiet on the Kentucky front. You don't really hear, and anything you hear about Kentucky, it's like if you do hear it about Kentucky, it's from somebody, a national beat writer, Phil to 68, or a national media guy, not necessarily Pope or, a Kentucky guy or something of that nature. Says, why in the world would Mo D go to LSU? Because they didn't have anybody on the roster. As of right now, he's guaranteed to start. He's the only player on the roster. So he's, one thing about Mo D, I think that really bothered him at Kentucky was that he came off the bench. I think that was one of those things that, bothered him and may ultimately have been why that, he decided to transfer. not real sure. He was the one I wanted to stay because I liked his toughness. Speaking of what's being out there, that someone said Duke's first 5 off the bench are better than UK starting 5. What do you think? It's a good question. I definitely think Duke, Florida. I definitely think Arkansas, some of these rosters are heavy with talent. I will say this. There's only one team I've heard of since 2015 being throwing around with the platoon is this year's Duke squad. So that tells me they're 10 strong, 10 deep. I know from what I've seen with projected starting lineups, I've seen that Darren Rippey, 5-star point guard, freshman, McDonald's All-American, they have him coming off the bench. I'd be curious to see where his numbers at the end of the year are, ranked with Zoom and Diallo and Wilkins. Although I expect Wilkins to be our best offensive player. And hopefully, we can get some pieces to go with him, or at least that can help him. And, but I've heard multiple people talk and I don't know if Shire will platoon because, if you remember back in 2015 when Kentucky did it, I know we went 38-1 and won our first 38 games or whatever it was. But a lot of players talked about it after the fact about how it was hard to kind of get in the flow. If you were in the flow, then you knew you were coming out. It was just, kind of get hard used to play like that. I think that, the one of the good things about it was people staying fresh. Players were staying conditioned. But, when you're like a Karl Anthony Towns or a Devin Booker or Trey Lyles, the Harrison twins, but somebody like Booker, you can't put him out there on the floor, let him get hot, then sit him on the bench. The one thing with the platoon is you knew it was safe that, like, whatever the minutes they had planned out was that, the next 5 were coming in. You had the blue platoon, the white platoon. And I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm not saying, it's the bad thing to do or it's I'm not a fan of the platoon for that reason, but also know that when you sign that many players, it's like you're going to have to play them all. I mean, Darren Rippey Jr. did not sign a big contract to come there and, set the bench or play third fiddle. He's going to get time. He's going to get minutes, but I also don't know if Duke expected to get this many to come back. They had quite a few from last year's roster return that, I'm not so sure where they thought they'd go or if they thought they were NBA ready or what, but, Shire's not only done a good job in the portal, but he's done a great job of keeping the players at Duke. All right, let me go here in my notes here I made today. Nah, they were just a different animal, Brian. They were a different animal, the 96 Kentucky team. Wow. But, a couple of the other names we've heard about recently is that Michael Rucic. He's that 7-foot Croatian. It's also being reported that BYU's the front runner for him. If that's the case, this will be the second player that BYU's beat us for. LSU's also in the hunt for this kid as well as we are. I watched film on him. I think his skill set will be great in the Pope system. I actually think Pope's offensive system, if he was a stretch 4, I know he likes to play the perimeter. I know at 7 foot, a lot of people would look at him as a center or so forth because of his size, but he's kind of his strength and rebounding kind of are one of his weaknesses as a 7-footer. His body makeup and composition probably isn't what you would consider SEC type body or SEC ready. But, as a stretch 4 in Pope's system, I believe that, his skill set would fit his system really well. He's got a high level shooting percentage, his mid-range game or high level shooting potential. His mid-range game is really strong. I think the more he steps out and shoots the threes, the better he's going to be, the more consistent he's going to be. His IQ level is really high. He's a great passer. Just with his overall ability to space the floor to bring that defender away from the basket could create a lot of driving lanes or for our guards to get downhill. Polacek put out on the message boards this morning that says, in talking to some sources this morning about Rucic, there's been a bit of tempering of expectations when it comes to Kentucky. He has some significant NIL offers on the table, and sources would be surprised to see Kentucky go that high with starter options already in the fold. Not impossible, but right now there's an expectation that other schools have more to offer. When he says other schools there, he's talking about BYU and LSU, and that's just kind of what we just said. They do have more to offer. Not only I don't know if they have any more money to offer, but they can do that starter option that he mentioned up there in the first paragraph. Kentucky's probably not going to offer him a starter role and starter money. And I think that's why he's saying there's been a tempering of expectations when it comes to Kentucky. Yeah, I also saw that BYU, I think, was in on him last year, I believe. And, you know, I used to think that mattered a lot, Donk. You know, when you really, you know, and some of the high school kids that I've been through the recruiting process with, the one thing I always tell them is, you know, remember those who were on you early. Remember those who believed in you and trusted you early. Remember those guys when it comes down to, I'm not saying you have to pick them, but remember them. You know, they were the ones who believed in you first, or they were the ones that give you your first offer. But now with NIL, I'm not so much, you know, when you come into play. For example, you know, look at Donnie Freeman. St. John's, I think, was the last one to come into play. You know, I think there's an old saying that goes, I think in the past, I think that was true. The earlier you got in on a recruit, the better chance you had. But I think there's a old saying now that goes something along the lines of, it's the early bird who gets the worm, but it's the second mouse who gets the cheese. I think if we get some kind of inclination that Momcilovic is coming to Kentucky, I think they'll find the money. He's the best player in the portal remaining, second best player from the start in the portal. I definitely believe that, you know, he's the guy that can really make or break, in my opinion. He can make or break Pope's season, as far as if Pope wants to return for season 4 or if Pope's going to be done after season 3. Because he's one of those ones who I feel like he's a difference maker. You know, we saw what he did to us in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Shoots damn near 50% from the three-point line. He I just think he's one of the few left that has that ability. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, I like Ryan Hampton, but coming in as an incoming freshman, although he's a 6'6", you know, small forward in a position of need maybe, without somebody else, I just don't think Hampton's enough. Now, there are a few other players. Momcilovic, definitely a great fit for Pope's system. Agree. But, you know, with Momcilovic, with Rucic, I should say, there's also that Hugo Mukori, or he's a 6'8" French small forward that have recently come on the scene that we've been reading a lot about. Him and that Rucic are both are on this list of the top 20 players under 20 years old. He's a 6'8" French small forward, but he's more recognized for his physicality, defensive versatility, and just like a high motor. He just plays with a lot of high energy, and he's being listed as a top 27 NBA prospect, and a lot of media people, statewide media people have kind of been on him, and they'd love for Kentucky to be able to lock him down with Momcilovic and get both of those guys, and thinking that maybe you might have a Final Four caliber roster. But Momcilovic, I don't know if him alone is enough, but if we can get him and add somebody else, I'd love to add Jordan Burks. Come back. He had a really great year last year for Central Florida. Go look what we'll talk about Jordan Burks here in a minute, but go look what he did against big time competition last year. Burks had a great year for Central Florida. But I'd like to get somebody like him with a Momcilovic. But this Hugo, if you see HW or HYM on social media, HYM, that's Hugo Yemka Mukauri. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's a 6'8" Frenchman. If you see HYM, that's how they shorthand it because nobody else knows how to pronounce his or spell his name either. But he's legit, He's some guy, a physical presence that we could really use in the SEC, and just his high motor, his just how hard he plays. Effort like that can be contagious with everybody else as well. I'd love to get him. Yes. Oh, he's already answered. Yes. Hey guys, glad to have you guys back. Hey Crash, won't you put together some kind of document or message me somehow of, when everybody streams? I'd like to pick a time that nobody else is streaming. I don't want to have to compete. I don't want to have to compete with other Big Blue Nation streamers for audience members. I don't want to steal theirs and don't want them to steal mine, so to speak. So if because I'm so random, I can go 11 o'clock at night if I thought I'd have the people to watch. Well, what did you miss? Well, let's talk about it while we got a minute here. We talked about how we first gave a shout out to the Kentucky Derby and first female trainer and Cherie DeVoe, but I mainly talked about that because I didn't know if a lot of people was aware that Golden Tempo was raised in Bourbon County on Claiborne Farms, in his early days. So I thought that was kind of cool. We talked about how JMI and UK are commercializing the rights to name Memorial Coliseum, and talked about Oscar Combs's tweet about how he would no longer support the university and its leadership if they got rid of Memorial Coliseum. I just gave my opinion talking about how they wouldn't change the name to Historical Memorial Coliseum. They would just add presented by or preserved by and add the company, corporation, or outfit that chooses to rename it. We talked about some of the people that just left the portal. Ikizi choosing Louisville. We talked about how I didn't feel like that was a great fit, considering he's a center, and they also just signed Badunga. I'm sure both those guys together require a lot of money. Juke Harris going to Tennessee. Bradshaw went to Tennessee State. That Bukurmovich or whatever, he was in the portal for like an hour. They were linking UK to him, had reached out to him, had garnered interest, and next thing you know, he's committed to Boston College. So, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, Crash. What do you think about I got you. Right. And I don't think they're going to quit calling it Memorial Coliseum. I really don't. Yeah, and it's bad. I've heard some people say they're all right with UK having a bad year as long as they can beat Louisville, Tennessee. And now you throw Arkansas into that mix when all three both have substantially better rosters on paper than we do. But I thought Tennessee was better on paper than we were last year, and we beat them twice. So on paper doesn't always mean a whole lot, But let me have your opinion, Crash, on did you feel like the Akizi signing was kind of odd with Louisville already having Badunga and they both play the same position? We talked about how are they going to try to play one at the 4, one at the 5, move the Iowa kid to a 3, or and that would essentially knock Carter Knox out of the lineup. Correct. And what are they? 1-3 against Pope. So, that's why I'm kind of holding on hope that if Pope can get the players he wants for his system, I think Pope can coach him. I think we saw that in the first season. Who's fine coming off the bench? Since it's Tipton, I'm sure you're thinking, or you're meaning Ikeeze's fine coming off the bench. That'd be a pretty mature statement for a freshman, but, some people are about the big picture and not the right now. Wow. That kind of shocks me. I wouldn't have think. Of course, I don't know what kind of contract they gave him or what kind of money he's getting right now, but I think it'd be kind of crazy to pay that kind of money. His Ikeeze only 17? Let me look that up. I wasn't thinking that. I was thinking that somebody else was. I was thinking the 7-foot Croatian, Rušić, he's only 17. I'm still trying to find his age. Well, if he did reclassify, that's true. He is 17. Yeah. Very good. He got paid. He doesn't care. I don't agree with that. I think these guys still want to play. They don't get to the next level if they don't play. That money's only going to last a short amount of time with these guys. They definitely want to play. They definitely want to be on the floor. They definitely want to build their brand. But also, I'm curious about HYM. I'd love to pair him with Momcilovic, but just don't know if that's realistic, and I'm not going to believe anything's realistic until I can see from Pope that we can actually sign somebody that we're in for and, I guess prove to me that we can get these guys that we want instead of having to, I guess, wait till nobody else takes them. But what I saw, I read this about Momcilovic. Also read that now that's true. That's true. And that may have been what Donkfish meant. I just misinterpreted what he was saying. But Momcilovic, the one thing I read that's open for discussion because it's a good topic of discussion is I read that he's wanting a top 30 promise in order to stay in the draft. If he's not getting that top 30 promise, which no mock draft that I've seen, read, no matter how new, how old, even after the NCAA tournament, when they called him, basically called him a merchant. But I've never seen him be in the top 30. So I don't think that's a possibility. However, with him being invited to the draft combine, I do think he's one that could go through the entire process before withdrawing his name, which I'm going to be honest with you. And you guys can tune in and ask, or you guys can tune in on this because this Momcilovic situation cannot turn into another Stokes situation. We cannot afford to play another waiting game. We've got to go out and get who we can. I heard he made a statement saying he's going to the draft. He did make a statement saying he was going to stay in the draft. That doesn't mean he's going to, and I guess until the final day, I guess you could change your mind. But I'll see if I can find that. Tunde, yes. Right here. Hold on. This was written by Andrew Ferguson on April 29th. Okay, April 29th about Tunde Yesufu. It says, UCLA back to drawing board after Yesufu decision. After a few weeks of speculation, Yesufu will be entering the NBA draft instead of remaining in the transfer portal. This is a major loss for UCLA as the Bruins were linked to him from the start and were viewed as an early favorite. So now, that was from April 29th. I thought I read to where he said that he was going to stay in the draft, but I guess that can change, right? So what do you all think about I mean, this Momcilovic cannot turn into another Stokes where we sit around and wait on him, and then he goes somewhere else. And we miss out on others. I will say this. Tunde's staying in the draft, Donk. That's coming out of his own mouth. Right. Yeah, but he's staying in the draft according to what it says on several sites. And I know it was announced on Twitter. That's where I first saw it. But I will say this. Big Blue Dylan, if you all follow him on Twitter, which he's I think he does a really good job. I really like him. I think he I don't know. I trust him. He reliable information. He said he received information from a source close to Momcilovic's situation, and they admitted that Kentucky is one of only a handful of schools that they'll entertain or they'll even talk to. So Kentucky will be in the mix with him. But well, Brian, I heard he already reached out to you with an offer. If it's $6 million, I think you give it to him regardless. But you weren't on here, Crash, when I was talking earlier. One of the things that I mentioned when talking about the portal, Matt Jones came into our group chat on the Big Blue Nation Hall of Fame group chat, and he said last night that everybody keeps saying that, since Stokes went to Kansas, Kentucky has a lot of this money left to spend. He said that statement's not necessarily true. He said there were donors only willing to give if Stokes came to Kentucky. So there is money that was only Stokes money, but he also said that he thinks if they were to be able to land another star, maybe like Momcilovic, that those same people would give the money if they know that they can get him. Right. And also, I saw today that there's already been at least six teams that have spent $20 to $25 million on their roster. And some of those teams aren't done yet. But Trilly also said that he really liked our situation with the 7-foot Croatian at Ružić. But he also said later this evening about Jordan Burks, who I don't know why. I know we've got a few at that position, but I think Burks had a really good year last year at Central Florida. And I was kind of hoping that we would get him or at least give him a look because he started in every game, but he had 24-6 in a win versus BYU. He played well against Kansas. I think he hit several clutch shots throughout the year for him. I just think Burks has grown as a player since his first year at Kentucky that, I'd be willing to give him a look. We talked about Ryan Hampton being the reclassification. How do you feel about him, Crash? About Ryan Hampton. I know him alone's probably not enough to move the needle a lot with our roster. Now, of course, if we could get him and Momcilovic,
but I'd rather have Momcilovic and pair him with Hugo, to be honest with you. They're going to reshuffle some money from other programs to give to Stokes. Now that he's out the money, that goes back to those original programs. But don't you think they could reshuffle some of those if they were to get somebody else? I mean, if I said it from day one that if you gave me my options of having Momcilovic next year or Stokes next year, I would have chose Momcilovic just because he's a proven NCAA basketball player. There's going to be a learning curve, I think, with Stokes from day one. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think he'd have to play small forward. I don't think Diallo or Wilkins is going to be benched. I think if Hampton's a freshman, unless he comes in and totally outplays Cam and Hawthorne, then I think you start him. But I mean, it'd be nice to have somebody like him coming off the bench if that's something he was willing. He acts like Kentucky's his dream school, but we've heard that before. I heard that $2 million of that was coming from Nike, so that's why I always thought that Kentucky was coming up with just $6 million. And the new name on the scene that I didn't know a lot about till today is that kid from Switzerland, 6'8" wing from Switzerland, Kamare Diakite. He averaging 16 points, 8 rebounds a game right now overseas. Not really sure where Kentucky stands with him, but he's one of those names that you heard that came out today that, and that's another thing that kind of grinds my gears about some of these Kentucky fans. Whenever a new name pops up or a new, one or two fans that we've talked about in recent shows that, we wouldn't consider to be ball knowers, or those fans that don't know a whole lot about, college basketball or Kentucky in general are, quote tweeting it saying, "Are you awake, Pope? Pope, you awake?" Or "We got to get this guy. We got to get this guy." When 30 minutes ago, they never heard of him, didn't know anything about him. I've heard Hampton wants a lot of playing time, but that was just a mention in passing. I don't know how reliable that information is. He seems like the type of kid to me that would want a lot of playing time. I've also heard LSU's in on him really bad, and LSU has all the playing time in the world to give anybody right now. I still think their roster only has Mo Diabate on it. I look for them to be a major suitor in the Ruchik sweepstakes, which I've kind of talked myself into liking that kid, a stretch 4 at 7 feet. Not very physical, weak defender and rebounder, but he can space the floor. He can stretch the floor. He's got a high IQ, good passer. So not 100% sure that, it just – do you all remember, Calipari last couple years, it came out to be that he was a little Wayne fan, and he made the comment that real G's move in silence like lasagna. That's a lyric to a Little Wayne song. I feel like I had more idea of what Pope was doing in the recruiting circle than what Calipari's doing than what Pope's doing. Like this weekend, to me, was eerily quiet. And Crash, I was telling them, when I got off the stream at 2:30 on Thursday night, I really expected to be having another stream on Friday night or Saturday, because I thought for sure we'd have some kind of commitment from Santos, or just a commitment, or another kind of, a boom, or just some good news or something. And I know the old adage, no news is good news, but to be quite frank, it just seems like I'm almost to the point that these days of no news stresses me out. I mean, well, that's not a really good reputation to have. I mean, I don't feel so bad for not knowing now. If other coaches at his position don't know what he's doing, then how can they expect me to know? It just seems eerily quiet to me. And And I'm not so sure it's a good eerily quiet. Like you're sitting on some big time information that you don't want anybody to know, so you don't tell anybody. Right. And I think it's safe to say, and this, that if you've coached a while or, no matter what level you've coached in, you've went after recruits that you just didn't get. I just seem to think that, Pope's list is longer than some, but that's okay. But I also see some names on the list. For example, this kid that we talked about, that Andrea Bukimirovich, that just was in the portal an hour before committing to Boston College. They had him on the list as a Pope whiff. I'm not sure Pope even had a chance to whiff on him. So I think every recruit out there, whether they be transfer portal or international or high school, if they don't commit to Kentucky, then I think it goes without saying they're referring it as a whiff to Pope, and that's not fair, nor is that accurate in my eyes. Where's all of our viewers at tonight? I can't even ask for any new subscribers, because most of these people on here are probably the same ones we get every night. I'm not seeing any. I don't see Holly. But if you are new here, before we continue, I know we're getting ready to get Peanut back. He said he'd be back at 10:30 or so when he gets off work. But if you are where in the world? If you are new here, please hit that like and subscribe button for me. I appreciate it. If you could hit that like button. If you're a subscriber, if you're not a subscriber, hit both for me. I appreciate that. Yeah, I know. That's kind of, hopefully everything's okay. She's one that I usually bank on for being here every night. But, and also, Crash, what's the deal with Devin Williams? I thought about him this weekend, where I Googled him and saw that he was still available, that he hasn't committed anywhere. Do you have any information on why Kentucky backed off him? I know he's taking a visit to Arizona tomorrow. North Carolina's on him. Virginia Tech, Oklahoma. But it seems like Kentucky's backed off. Whoever it is I was just talking about, I lost my train of thought. Devin Williams, from Florida Atlantic. Says, I do think he needs to talk more to the fan base, but at the same time, I don't know what he really should say. I don't know what words he can offer that would accomplish anything. And you kind of just, it's almost like you watched my show from earlier when I talked about that. I said just a few minutes ago, message her and tell her I said to get on here drunk. But no, you're right, Crash, because I said that. I said, I don't think he has to tell the fan base every single thing he's doing or every move he's making, but just to give an update every once in a while. He don't even have to do a press conference. It could be a recorded video in my eyes. But it seems like it's getting to be where we've not heard from him in 2.5 months. Whatever he said right now, he wouldn't accomplish anything. One, it'd get made fun of. Two, it would be taken out of context, or, it just wouldn't accomplish anything. What do you mean as far as backpedaling, and what, like, you talking about reaching out to a recruit and then backing off? And there's just so many things that we don't see and hear and know in the recruiting game and conversations, whether it be through Zoom, in person, with the agent, with the player. The recruiting game just, it's just a whole nother animal in my eyes, that, there's no way that Pope or the players or anybody could tell us everything going on. But I would be curious to hear some from players, like, when they talk to college coaches, what are they looking for from them? What do they want to hear from them? Do they want to hear you're going to start and play, 40 minutes? This is kind of an interesting statement here from Perry Stevenson. I'll read what Crash says first. They don't seem to be totally plugged into reality. There's been so many guys that they think they're getting that they never really had a chance at. So I think that would get compounded by Pope talking about it. Yeah. But, what is going on with them that they don't really know? How can you not talk to a recruit multiple times and not get a pretty accurate picture or pretty accurate on where they lean? Just like that whole let's go from Mo Williams to Tyron Stokes. It's almost like he really believed they were getting him. And I don't think anybody in the fan base thought they had a real good chance or a real good opportunity. I'm just not, I just don't, what's the disconnect there? What's the disconnect? But if you looked at the picture where the transfer portal rankings with Louisville being the horse out in front, Kentucky was coming in last because we are coming in last in the transfer portal rankings. So if they would have read and looked, and I get that, but, I thought it was clever to kind of incorporate the Kentucky Derby with the transfer portal rankings. And, I even had the team's logo on the horse. So, that's why they call it Portal Madness. Yeah, it's more like Wild Wild West. Yeah, it's David, I understand what you're saying, but and it's not like the way I stand right now is I think our roster is better than what a lot of people are giving it credit for. I worry about our depth. I worry about once we get into conference play, I worry about us being able to go, 7 to 9 deep with the physicality and, just the rebounding and, toughness needed to compete in the SEC. I don't know. It's freaking weird. I think the Stokes thing screwed us over big time. Pope kept trying to keep guys in limbo before fully committing to them. Right. I've heard a lot of people say that the Stokes recruitment, and I've even heard, players say the Stokes recruitment hurt Kentucky with certain players. I don't know if we're passing on Santos. I think LSU's offered him more money. LSU's got starting positions to offer that we don't. And I was always a little hesitant on, even at the high school level, not with recruits, but with people that were juniors coming back for their senior year. I was always hesitant about promising them a starting spot because I didn't want them not to work out, to quit working. And I would think it would be some of the same issues at the collegiate level. Why would you want to tell a kid, I'm going to promise you this starting spot? Why would you want him to go in there and earn it every day by just outplaying the competition? But I know NIL and getting people on the roster, you almost tell them about anything nowadays. Once you get them on campus, that don't mean you have to stick to your word, which may hurt you in the future or may hurt you with that recruit and them transferring after the season or whatever. But LSU's got a lot to offer right now. They've got one player on their roster. So I don't think we're passing on Santos. I think Santos is passing on us. Although he hasn't committed to LSU just yet. That did. And, I'm aware that the Beckham point guard in the 27 class, he's a second-rated point guard in 27 class. I talked about him a lot last show. He was one of the ones that kind of mentioned that, Kentucky seemed very occupied with Stokes to, with then kind of lost out on some other recruits. And yeah, but the one thing, it is sad. I hate to see it happen too, because, I've told you I want to see Pope succeed here because I truly think he bleeds blue and white. But I will also say this, Jake. I don't think Pope's ever going to quit working. He may know that he's in a little bit over his head. He may know it's not working out. He may know he isn't living up to Kentucky standards. but he's going to go to work every day and he's going to continue to try. I really do think he's going to do his damnedest to make all this work. Now, that don't mean he will. We're not passing on Santos. He might be passing on us. Yeah, that's kind of but I just, this whole, not only Santos, but this whole situation with Devin Williams is just kind of frustrating me. Like, he was one of the first ones we reached out to in the portal. If you remember, the center from Florida Atlantic. I mean, I remember him being a hot topic on Twitter for 2 or 3 days about Kentucky wanting him. He is still out there. He's still taking visits. And the last thing I read was that, Kentucky has backed off on him, which, unless they just don't feel like he's a fit now, unless they feel like they got enough players at that position that they don't need him now, I'm not 100% sure. But I guess the other one we're waiting on potentially, Yesufu's already announced. I don't think there's any chance he comes back to play college basketball. But I can tell you this. Alan Graves, I think from Santa Clara, or Momcilovic. We have to get one. We have to get one. LSU is offering him more money, correct? And I think they're also offering Santos a starting position. We need to pay more. Where's LSU getting all this money? They have one player on their roster, Brian. One player. They're only paying one player right now, and that's Diabate. They just have a lot of money, and I'd say Diabate probably didn't get much more than $2 million, if that. Hey, I'm trying to let Pope cook, Todd. I'm trying to let him cook, but right now, I think he forgot to preheat the oven. But I'm hanging in there. I think if we've got to get Momcilovic or Graves. I don't know. It just seems like everybody I think we got a chance to get, they seem to, next time I log on Twitter, they've signed on with somebody else or they've committed elsewhere. Pope has been cooking. That's the problem. If those of you that are new here, or not new like as in first time, but if you started the show late, when you get a chance, go back and listen to the monologue. I did it as if I was announcing the Kentucky Derby, but I did it with the transfer portal teams. So I thought it was kind of unique. And if people aren't showing up because they thought I was talking about the Derby, then I know better than to do something silly. But I really thought the Derby was a great story this year with the first female trainer. And then I thought it was kind of cool to, kind of take the transfer portal graphics or transfer portal rankings and put them into graphics on a horse and kind of link it to Kentucky. I thought I was being creative, but I may have caused people not to show up, which, like I said, I'm not doing it for viewers, but the discussion's a lot better when we can get Santos is the best available where? International? He's not the best available in the portal. If that's the truth, then LSU probably does have the lead. That's definitely what it seems like. I think the seat's warm, David. He's not the best available. Momcilovic is the best available in the portal. He might be the best available international. Santos is going with the money. We just need to pay more. Well, that's the whole reason why, if you think about it, last year, $22 million roster, all Pope heard about, all Kentucky did was talk about how much he overpaid for Quaintance, how much he overpaid for Lowe, how much he overpaid for so-and-so. He didn't know what that – I mean, he had to have some idea that Quaintance wasn't going to play a lot, but he had no idea Lowe was going to get hurt when he signed him. So now they bring in this Keegan Brown to kind of help with value and overpaying, and now we're telling Pope to overpay. Graves is a dead end. Do you see him staying in the draft, Crash, or where do you see him going? We don't have as much money as people thought for the simple fact that money that was Stokes' money, that was just for Stokes. That wasn't for Kentucky to spend elsewhere. I found that out today. That's a big if. That's what I'm saying. Like, and especially if they're giving him more money than what we offered, that means we'd be going up even more money to pay for a guy that we're not sure is worth, that we're sure is worth the value. Oh, okay. Well, after Oway beat him on that last second shot, he may not have any interest. Santos is not the best option we have. I don't know why you keep saying that. No, yeah, that's their purpose, and it's worked so far. And I do think Kentucky's one of the only few teams that probably hasn't engaged in many that cost them to overpay. Is Santos ranked higher than Devin Williams from Florida Atlantic? Because he's going on a visit to Arizona tomorrow. Arizona's got a pretty good squad. Here's my thing. And here's my thing. All I'm saying is I don't necessarily care who our backup center is. Okay? What can't happen is we have to use Reese Potter as our backup center. Can't happen. That cannot happen. So I definitely think we need to find somebody. Crash also heard Stokes is going to Oregon. Yeah, he wasn't the only one. David, this is what NILs become. This is what NILs become. I think it, yeah. Devin Williams, Florida Atlantic. Go look him up. Well, it seems like they can all gain eligibility, but the one we want, who was that? The shooter, the lefty, Stefan, whatever his name was. I thought he was going to Oregon. They may have to pivot. I'll be honest with you, John Boy. I'm going to be honest with you, 100% honest with you. Most streamers may not be honest with you. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It's been so eerily quiet on the UK front since Thursday. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. I think I'd... No. Not in the SEC, I don't think so. I said that I thought he was going to Oregon. I don't know if Crash said that. He may have said it too. I thought he was going to Oregon because he kept alluding to a Nike school, and I didn't think he wanted to be at Kentucky. I literally thought he was going to Oregon. Even that night, I thought he was going to Oregon. I just want, I'm not going to lie. I want just a complete roster and get this portal stuff over with. I agree with that. And I think a lot of those bidding wars are initiated by the player trying to squeeze a little bit more money. And you can't blame them. He's not calling him because he's probably Zooming with him. Juxtanovich is 17. Can't recall. Okay. Well, we're going to have 30-year-olds playing in the NCAA before long. We're going to have, I mean, this is getting out of hand. If it ain't already out of hand, it's getting out of hand. And I'm not so sure of what there is. I mean, I'm not so sure what there is to even do about it. What do we do about it? I know it probably don't, John Boy. We probably drive you to drinking. There's got to be an age cap, doesn't there, Jake? I guess if it'd have to be 24 because I think it starts the day they finish high school or their 19th birthday. I think I read. So 24 would have to be the cap. I mean, that would have to be when I guess they would have to finish. Trying to think if 19th. Yeah, I think it would be 24. Okay, yeah. I was making sure my math was correct. I like checking Twitter while we're live to see if maybe some big boom comes across the heck yeah. Hey, we'll sign Ott Elmore. I think he does player GM. Yeah, I've heard that. I mean, but my question was earlier, like, why did he back off? Does he got somebody else that we don't know about? Is he banking on? I don't know. I just know the 7-footer Croatian that we've talked about. I think he's more of a stretch 4 in Pope's system than a 5. He can't rebound, and he's not a great defender. He's not very physical. He's more like a beanpole at 7 foot. But he is able to stretch the floor, and his passing and high basketball IQ, I think, make it I guess, kind of an interesting pickup or an interesting recruit. I'd love to have that commitment. I've also got a balding spot back here, too, more than some of the coaches. Well, yeah, I guess they'll just have to word it in a way to where reasons why, I guess, the sabbatical or service. Yeah, I think. Except Pope. Well, no, he does have balding spots. He's got the whole head bald. Religious exemptions for everybody. That's probably one area they're not going to fight. They're probably going to they're not going to fight the religious one, I wouldn't think, regardless. Do you think we miss on Santos? My guy's in the athletics department, not b-ball staff, so he can't spy on them when they're doing overseas trips. Was Pope at the Derby? I never really saw anything saying he was or wasn't. I know that That kind of shocks me, honestly. Does it kind of surprise you that he wasn't? No coaches were. Well, I'm bald from the back, so I'm a lover. Lover. I think Pope zoomed the race. That's funny. Unicorn. If you want to do an all-nighter, we can do an all-nighter. So you're all twins, sis. I got you. Okay. I didn't know y'all were twins. Terry was giving a lot of insight while she was here. Yeah. Heck yeah. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Nico Bandala, I know Pope. You know what? I've heard other people say that too, Ink, and I've not got an answer. I'm not real sure. While you're here, hit that like button, Unicorn. Can imagine what they would have to deal with if they showed up at the, well, very good point. Especially with alcohol being served, Kentucky fans. Marino would have been ranked 4th. Hawthorne, they didn't have a ranking. So basically it looks like, you know, Pope's got a top 5 recruit in Marino. He convinced him to stay back. So they had Cam Williams ranked at 143, I saw, which I think's a little low. I'm not so sure he's top 10, but I don't think he's that low anyhow. But Hawthorne, I didn't see a ranking, probably because he didn't play last year. I think he would have been highly sought after just because, you know, he was top 30 in that class. I think it hurt him a little bit as ranking goes because he didn't play last year. So kind of hard to rank a kid that hasn't played a game yet. But I will also say this, speaking of rankings, Bart Torvik, did you all see that stuff that Bart put out? Bart's kind of new on the scene with me. I've not really paid a lot of attention to Bart lately or recently or whatever. He's just been popping up more frequently. I may have interacted with a tweet or something here and there. I don't know. But did you see where he said Kentucky's ranked 45th and 12th in the SEC? He has Kentucky ranked 12th in the SEC. Pope better hope not. I agree. Wilkins will be a future lottery pick. Malachi maybe as well. I saw some people saying that Malachi could have been top 20, 21 or 2 if he stayed in the draft this year. I hope so. We just need a backup big and a true wing. We're good. Pope and Brown are playing backgammon. Well, I kind of wish they would play a game that the recruits knew how to play. I'm not so sure a lot of our recruits know how to play backgammon. Not sure they do. I literally ignore all preseason rankings for anything. Yeah, basically it's clickbait, and basically it's just they know the Kentucky fan base still moves the needle as far as clicks and interactions go, but I just think they're good talking points. Now, I mean, I've seen some as high as 20. Kentucky ranked 23rd, then I also seen them ranked 45th. I'm not so sure how many teams in the SEC are going to be better or worse than us. Bait, agree. We're middle of the SEC if better or better. I'm sure we have a top 25 team. The starters don't concern me. I'm not going to lie. The starters don't concern me one iota. I think Florida and Arkansas are clearly better as far as the roster goes. I think Tennessee has a better roster on paper, but they've not shown they're 1-3 against Pope. Alabama's probably better. I couldn't tell you anything about Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Auburn, Oklahoma. If you can't learn backgammon, you're not a Pope recruit. Simple as that. But you got to trust him. Coolest Mormon since Mitt Romney. I think that's understandable. I think they're definitely taking a kind of a different approach, still sticking, Cal, he's going to stick to that freshman. He said it 1,000 times here. He'd rather have talent than experience. So maybe that's what he's sticking. I haven't heard him say anything yet, but I expect him to. You're going a little bit far for me there, John Boy. If you want to say maybe our 3 or so, maybe, but Reese Potter, Zion Hawthorne, Trent Noah. I can think of several that aren't. I'm worried about the level of drop-off when we go to the bench. And, well, maybe if we have that kind of drop-off, maybe that gives Pope a reason to not have to substitute. Because if I learned anything last year, he don't have a really good feel, or he don't have his finger, thumbprint on the substitutions. He's a Hall of Fame coach, John Boy. It's like when Angel Reese came out with all the hype was around and created around her. Now, look, she's playing for Atlanta and hasn't really done anything. There's a lot of good coaches out there, guys, that don't have that. Think about it. Yeah, Texas, you're right, John Boy. They're going to be good. I mean, Izzo's only got one. There's a lot of coaches that don't have any. So it's hard to say. Angel Reese is better than Reese Potter, David Linville. Pooter was better than both, but those ain't your Linvilles. That's true. Texas, yeah, I agree. I actually like the bench with Hawthorne, Morton, and McBride. I don't think McBride's getting talked about enough. McBride may start. Who you going to start at the 4? Oh, Njai, maybe. I just think Njai. Here's what I believe. I think Njai is a wild card. I think Njai is a wild card. I could be wrong, but from watching his tape, it seems like he shoots some crazy shots. His shot selection, he's off balance, and some of them are going in, but I think he's a wild card. That's true. I think he's given you a few reasons for you to doubt that, but go look at his first 10 years here. And some people will say he should have had 4 or 5 championships. Very few teams. I think UConn might be the only team other than UCLA back in the day that's had 4 or 5 championships in a 10-year span. I don't think we're talking about him enough, and I wouldn't be shocked at some point in time if he starts and Njai comes off the bench. I think Njai's got a really high ceiling. I just think he'll have an adjustment period too. He's never heard of Pooter. Should have had at least 2, maybe 3. Yeah, I'll say 2. I think the 2015 squad definitely was one that got away. Potentially 2010, but that's definitely up for debate. It's also a common, I see that I don't know. I've seen that argued on Twitter a lot, on other forms of social media. Pitino's definitely a much better coach, and Pitino might be the best coach in the game. Other than, it's hard to argue with what Hurley's done here recently at Connecticut, but Pitino back at St. John's doing what he's doing. I don't know. You're using the word stars loosely. I don't see McBride being an NBA player. I think he's too small, but I think he can be a very good college basketball player. I'll have to watch more of him before I decide that. But, I'm not so sure about him as far as the next level. But Wilkins will play at the next level, and I know Marino will play at the next level. Zoom, I guess that's to be determined. Njai's a high-energy bench guy. McBride or Hawthorne will start at the 4, but I believe Pope is still cooking. It smells like baklava. I hope. I like the smell of baklava. Probably at least one more. If Patino stayed, we'd be chasing 10 or 11 right now. It's hard to argue. All I hope for, John Boy, is I'd love to beat Louisville, Arkansas, and Tennessee. But if I have my choice out of those, I want to beat Louisville first, then Arkansas. I don't hear too many of the Tennessee fans on Twitter. I just block all them. But we got several people around here that jumped ship with Cal when he went to Arkansas. So they became big, huge Arkansas fans, and they even call the Hogs now. They claim to be big BBN, but they're not. Win or lose, I'm a diehard fan who believes blue will till the day I die. I can't wait to see our players and what they're made of, seeing their highlights. They all seem so good. Terry, you're the kind of fan that we need. There's a lot of doom and gloom on Kentucky basketball all over social media, and I have my days. I have my days where I think, okay, we're going to surprise some people, and then I have my days where I feel like, you know what, we continue to miss out on good pieces that could fill our roster, complete our roster. Eventually all these players are going to be gone, and then I remember, well, once these players withdraw their name from the portal, which I'm sure Pope's waiting on those, there's still, I think, 70-some names, I think, that are in the draft or so. We may see a few of those even kind of withdraw their name. I just think where we're going to have the biggest problem is, and I could be wrong, I still think Momcilovic is going to be in the portal till the last minute. He's going to go through the whole draft process. He's been invited to the draft combine. What I'm hearing is he wants a top 30 guarantee. I don't think he's going to get that, but I think he's going to wait around until he sees. And, I don't want us waiting on him turn into a Tyron Stokes situation that, not only missed out on Stokes, we also missed out on other big-name recruits that wanted to be here because we waited on Stokes. There's Peanut. I knew he'd be back. If we're consistently recruiting players out of Croatia, then I'm sticking with Pope. Anybody who's a Tony Kukoc fan is my kind of guy. But it's not only – consistently recruiting them is one thing. Consistently signing them and getting a commitment out of them is another. Come home, mommy. Call him up. Everybody call your mommy. Call mommy home. Go ahead and tell him to withdraw from the draft. Tell him to come home. That's getting to be common with every fan base at the high school, college, and professional level. Hell, Orlando just took the number 1 seed to the to the 7th game, and number 1 seed to the game 7 in the finals. They fired their coach because they're going to hire Billy Donovan. And that's true. That is 100% true. But I think the only thing that really frustrated me last year, and I say the only thing, but I'm going to mention, multiple. The slow starts absolutely killed me. Couldn't stand the slow starts, getting down, double digits early, then having to crawl our way back. Then by the time we crawled our way back, we'd be so tired, couldn't get over the hump, or we'd have to throw up a Hail Mary shot at the buzzer to pull one out. And those types of wins just aren't sustainable, And then, the other thing too is it's like the substitutions we've talked about. I don't know how you get to that next level and coach solely on analytics. You've got to have a feel for the game, in my opinion. And I don't think it matters if you're at high school, college, NBA, G League, YMCA, Church League, the Potter House League, or wherever you're at. I think you have to have a feel for the game. There's got to be a feel. If somebody starts out playing really well and they get a hot hand, you've got to ride them. You got to stay with them. And that's the whole reason why I wasn't a real big fan on the platoon. that whole platoon system was, you get Devin Booker in the first 5 or the second 5, he gets hot. He knows he's coming out at a certain time. And, the time he comes out, that could be solely on, the coach and not letting him stay warm. Speaking of, should have had a GM, the over-reliance on analytics, yeah. And I get so frustrated on the Reds because, the coaching staffs the last few years or the managerial staffs last few years, they're focusing a lot on analytics. And baseball is more of an analytic type thing to me. But speaking of GMs, did y'all see the interaction with Kyle Wilger today? Kyle Wilger stated that I think he was doing it to kind of get the fan base to acknowledge, but he simply started the conversation by asking if Kentucky had a general manager. And of course, you can imagine the comments, but he basically said he had a few more years left of playing, and then his future, that's what he wants to be. He wants to be a general manager. How do you all feel like Kyle Wilger would do as a general manager? I'm not saying at Kentucky, but obviously I'd like to have a general manager that's familiar with our program. He is a national champion. I also think he made the right move by leaving after his freshman year. But how would y'all feel if Kyle Wilger was and I'm not saying he's our best option, but, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that may be a better option, but I like the idea of Kyle Wilger, expressing his input on our need for a general manager at Kentucky. Nathan says, I like our team. I like our first 6, 7. I'd like to get a couple more. I'd like for our rotation be down to 8 or so come March, but I think early on in the season and sometimes to the SEC, we need a few more bodies. Just to, the SEC's physical. I'm not going to lie. It wears you down. And with the injuries, and that's the one thing I was going to mention earlier, and I think Crash got on and I was filling him in. The one thing I did read about the 7-foot Croatian, the Ružić or whatever, Michael Ružić, they say he's very injury prone. A lot of that could be that he's 17 and he's skinny as a rail, possibly. But I agree, Nathan. I like the makings of our team. If we could somehow get Momcilovic, I'd like to get that Hugo out of France, 6'8", just a physical, defensive, high-energy guy. I think he'd fit well. I want Momcilovic, obviously, but if we can't get either one of those, I'd be okay with Ryan Hampton. Ryan Hampton ain't enough by himself. I think he's one of those high-minute, high-volume guys, and I just don't know if, coming in as a freshman, that if we sign him and we get somebody else too, that'd be all right. But I know he's good. I know he's a 5-star, but give me Momcilovic all day if he's an option. Crash said he was heard it was going to take almost $6 million. If he wants $6 million, I'd give him $7 million if he says I'll sign right now. Cats last season gave me a heart attack or my blood pressure was up. I have high blood pressure already, Terry, and I think I even made last season I had a couple trips to the emergency room. I'm not saying the Cats were the cause of it, but I already suffer from hypertension. I'm already on medication. They sure in the hell didn't do me any favors, that's for sure. We didn't have any better than average players, period. Owe can't be your best player, but Alex Wilkins can be, and Zoom Diallo is a perfect sidekick. I agree with that, and I think that's what made Owe so effective the first year. Brea was good. Butler was good. I liked Carr. I just felt like Amari Williams. I just felt like the whole team was all pretty nice players. I didn't – but, last year I think it was just clear that, we didn't have the right pieces, and, Owe forced a lot. Aberdeen dribbled a lot. There was just a lot of different. I'd definitely be okay if Mashburn was. I'd be okay with Mashburn as a GM, 100%. Um, 6'7". What are you talking about? 67? You talking about Tyron Kenny or Talon Kenny? I should say. I get him and Stokes first. They both sound the same first name. Let me see if we got anything going on. Nathan, why are you writing 6'7" in the chat? I don't know what that is in relation to. Is somebody else asking a question? You know, just like and I know we won the game at LSU, but just like that slow start in LSU, just getting down 18-3. And, you know, and I know if you all heard Derek Anderson, he alluded to that. He talked about just being unprepared. Pope's practices didn't prepare Kentucky for those games. And I think if we have a chance to get Momcilovic, then the same boosters that were go give money only if Stokes committed will also come up with the money for Momcilovic. Now, I don't think they'll agree to come up with that same amount of money for like a Santos or somebody like that. But I'm not gonna lie, and I think Crash even kind of explained it. But I was shocked when I heard that some of the money we had for Stokes was only there if Stokes committed. Like if he didn't commit, like the money went back. Because now it makes sense that they were getting that money from other programs at Kentucky. But also heard that there were several boosters that said that they would only donate that money if Stokes committed to Kentucky. But not 100% sure. I got to get me a gaming chair or something. This chair hurts. I mean, I even got a lot of cushion. It doesn't have to be a Kentucky alum, though. What are you thinking, Jake, or who are you thinking? You got anybody in mind? I just know a lot of, if you get somebody who has a lot of name recognition like a John Wall, he's going to get players and things at Howard that Howard normally couldn't get because these kids are going to know who John Wall is. Who's ranked number 67? Just what do you mean? Go look back at those player rankings in the portal. What are you talking about? Have I missed a comment of yours that maybe I missed something? It's unprecedented for a coach to be fired after a Sweet 16 unless it's for off-court issues or you coach at Kentucky. Just for the simple fact that, that's not our standard. And, somebody mentioned earlier that they feel like Pope probably knows that he's not living up to the standard. And I said, yeah, he probably does. However, I don't think Pope's one that'll quit either, on trying to reach that standard or kind of set that standard. I think Pope's a hard worker. I really do. Now, working hard and getting something accomplished and working hard and getting nothing accomplished are two different things. But it's not just John Wall, John Boy. Pope don't want a GM, period. I don't think Pope wants to relinquish some of the control he has. I mean, basically the GM would do pretty much of the, negotiating and a lot of behind the scenes stuff that Pope's doing now. It would give Pope a lot more time to, coach, develop things like that. But I think Pope's not ready to relinquish that control. Although I feel like they're going to force his hand. If he comes back for another year, Kentucky will have a GM. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, the French kid, he's also 17. That is correct. What was his name again? I got it here in my notes. Is that the Hugo? HYM. When you hear HYM, that's Hugo. Let me see here. I'm putting something in the chat here. Hugo Yamga. Mukori. A lot of people on Twitter, you're just saying right HYM, and I've heard a couple people ask what that means. So, man, if you knew how many comments I had coming through here at a time, it ain't as easy as you think. I need a GM to run the behind the scenes here. I don't think some of you realize how hard it is to run this whole system back here. Try to see everybody's comments. Try to get the latest intel and news and watch Pagan blow another damn save opportunity for the Reds. Gives up a damn leadoff triple in the bottom of the ninth, up 4-3. Jeez. I get so sick and tired of Pagan. If he wants to keep his job, he'll relinquish it. I agree. I mean, it should have been done this year. I've not watched him a lot, John Boyd, but all signs point to him being good. Yeah, definitely backgammon. I agree. Definitely backgammon. Peanut, what are you yassing about? Are you a Cubs fan? If you're a Cubs fan, right. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Peanut, I thought I liked you. I'm just kidding. But until the Reds decide to get another closer, it's amazing they've been 11-0 in one-run games until the Pirates yesterday. Yeah. Anytime Pagan comes in, they got to have a 3-run lead for him to be safe. They never miss in those highlights, do they, Crash? He just struck Swanson out, so 1 out, man on third. And I think that's the one thing you'll see from a lot of these international players. I mean, hell, they're professional since 15. So how good can they actually be, at 15? Yeah, you almost had to be a Braves fan or a Cubs fan growing up because WGN and TBS. Let me go see. I received an email here. Let me go check it out and see what it is. All right, StreamYard. Let me pull it up here. Oh, look at my big face up there because I didn't crop it. All right, there's our there's our current roster. If you look at this roster here, hold on here a minute. They just tied it up on a sacrifice fly. Shit. All right, so if you look at these players here, let's be honest. Marino's probably going to come back. Got Cam Williams, Hawthorne, Diallo, Wilkins, Njai, McBride, and Morton. That's basically 8. Although I'm seeing a lot of smoke on Twitter and stuff about Mason Williams running the backup if Diallo or Wilkins get in foul trouble or whatever. But I think we talked about that yesterday, and I even told you my thoughts on that, or not yesterday, but the last show. I think if Zoom gets in foul trouble, they'll move Wilkins to the 1. If Wilkins gets in foul trouble, Diallo will stay at the 1, or vice versa, whatever. I think those two switch back and forth with the 1. I don't think it's a foul trouble. The first sub off the bench at the point guard is Mason Williams. We basically have 8 players. We've got 3 roster spots open. I don't think we have any reason to not believe that they don't fill all 3. I've seen different people say different things. I wish we could get a player like Oscar T. I've seen a picture of him in Wisconsin at the Derby has won. Yeah, he was a great player. I think he was just the ultimate teammate too. I think he, but Oscar's one of those guys that comes around in the portal that you don't get very often at Kentucky, and what he did in 2 years here, sweeping the Nationals Players of the Year, and 20 rebounds was common, like 7 rebounds are the most. Can you give a short Hugo Yigma bio? What I will do just for you, all right, this is ChatGPT says he's one of the most exciting young prospects in European basketball, widely viewed as a future NBA caliber talent. I actually read somewhere that he was a top prospect in the 27 class. Full name, 2008. Therefore, he a peanut, just to let you know, Pagan just gave up a walk-off home run to Michael Conforto or whatever. Walk-off home run. Pagan needs to be sent. Terrible. 2008, so it makes him, not 18 yet. His 18's coming up from France. 6'8", 6'9" wing. It's you can read his bio there, but his professional career, he signed at 16 years old, playing in France's top professional league. He quickly earned rotational minutes and showed flashes of high-level scoring ability, including multiple double-digit scoring performances as a teenager. It says his early production and physical tools have already made him a standout among players his age. He won a bronze medal in the under-16 European Championship, silver medal in the under-18 European Championship. There's his playing style and strengths: his elite athleticism, versatility, size, and mobility. His upside, future first-round NBA prospect. And it says he's a rising French basketball star with a rare blend of size, athleticism, and versatility. So, and if you want to ask him, Todd, he can break down his game film or compare him to NBA players. That's where it really gets interesting. But I can tell you this for about the Reds, losing 3 in a row to the Pirates. They'll probably lose 3 out of 4 to the Mets. They'll be in last place, and they'll go from first to worst in a matter of about a week and a half. I've been saying it all year that if you don't have a 3-run lead when he comes into the game, it's an adventure. I just had to comment to the chat because I didn't want to say it out loud. Go Cubs, go. That might get you banned. Hugo is higher than Christian Collins. Now, we don't need you to sing the song. Play a highlight. I love French players. Let me see if I can find a highlight of Hugo. Hugo Yigma. All right. Well, he pops up pretty quick here. All right. Here's 1:04. Oh, YouTube rejected my comment because I put a naughty word in there. All right, let me play a highlight here. Let me see if I can make it bigger on my. All right. I have no idea which one he is. I guess we'll figure it out. I'd say that's him right there. That'd be my guess. Is that the same clip? We'll pick the picker action up top. Ooh, no call. Blocker charge, you make the call. Spotting up over here in this corner. Showing a little post game. Mouse in the house. Took little man to the post. All right, well. So, what do we think about that? Yeah, I was sold on Santos, although I know a lot of people weren't. I know the podcast wasn't sold on him, but I was sold on him, and I kind of wish we would have been able to lure him in. I just liked his age. I liked his experience. Honestly, I don't know the answer to this question here. Crash may know more about him, but he I honestly didn't really see his name coming on the scene till recently. But yeah, I mean, if we got to start signing 7 guys out of the international portal, I wouldn't be upset about it. Just looking at my draft boards, there seems to be several bigs that are on the outside looking in on the draft that we could pursue. Name us a few of them, Crash, just to kind of give us an idea. I hope Pope has a plan. That makes 2 of us. Yeah. Of course, you know what they say about highlights. They never miss on the highlights. I see a little Mashburn. Yeah, that's the first thing I looked for. I didn't find any full games either, but I didn't stay around and search too long because once I have it full screen, I can't really see anything else going on. LSU's offered him a starting job and a lot of money, Inc. So I think it would cost us I think we'd almost may have to overpay. I'd love to get Santos. I just don't think. I mean, Popes will have to prove, but LSU's offering a lot. Muhammad Faye, not real familiar. He's 6'9", 17-year-old. Can we do a draft and stash? Well, we can sign him to 2 years and not play him the first year. From the Senegal. Okay, that's a very popular. Inspector Gadget back. What's up, my man? Thanks for being here. Give us a like. If anybody's new here, which I don't know how many of y'all are, because I think most of y'all's names I've seen before, but if there is anybody new here, please give me a like and a subscribe. That's what I heard. I heard he wasn't, just because, not that he's not in play. I heard he was choosing between LSU, Kentucky, and BYU. LSU was the current favorite because they had offered him a starting spot, and they had offered him more money than what Kentucky did. Yeah, okay. I've heard of that guy. Oh, did you all see where that kid from Providence, that Vox, Vaaks, he just committed somewhere today. He was from Providence, that guard. I think he was a freshman or something, maybe. Stefan Vox. He went to Illinois. I know that probably doesn't surprise you considering their roster and their makeup. He's probably a pretty good fit for Illinois, but somebody posted NJ full game versus Germany. He looked really good in that game. I just think we're going to have to be patient with him. I think he's highly skilled with the huge cylinder. But I think we're going to just have to be patient. I think there's going to be a learning curve. I think, for one, I think our game's a lot different than what they play. I'm looking to see if I mentioned that earlier. I didn't remember who said it, but Sean Miller, that's right. He says he thinks 20 out of 25 teams have already spent at least $20 million this year. Kentucky ain't nowhere near that. I think Kentucky's like $13 million. But here's the thing. Last year when Kentucky spent $22 million, Kentucky overpaid. Oh, they overpaid. Now Kentucky fans are wanting Pope to go out and spend $6 million on backup centers. See you, David. No, I think he's young. I mean, I just think that's what I mean when I say there's going to be a learning curve. I think his game is kind of erratic. I think if you go look at, I read that tweet from TJ Walker one night. Says you're going to love him, you're going to hate him, kind of thing. Like his shot selection is just, I don't know. It kind of looks like sometimes he's not square to the basket and he releases the ball. He kind of turns in the air. Just, I don't know. Some of his shots look wonky, I should say, but we definitely need something positive. Not for sure when that is. I really thought, I woke up this morning to somebody calling Kentucky Hype Man. Not for sure who he is. He may even be in here. It may be a Twitter account that one of you all run. I'm not sure, but the first tweet I saw when I woke up this morning for Kentucky Hype Man was he got good intel that Kentucky had some good news coming. Be prepared for a boom. So I checked Twitter all day, never saw a boom. I mean, I guess we'll see. If they make the Final Four, I guess they didn't overpay. I mean, that tells me that if we spent $22 million, all these teams spending 20 to 25, or is the talent so much better? Is the talent so much better today or this year so people are willing to spend more? I think that's something we're going to see increase each year. The amount of money that teams are willing to spend, if it's never capped, is going to continue to increase, in my opinion. Oh, I definitely do that. Yeah. Boom. No, Gadget. I was saying that one of the first tweets I saw this morning was a guy saying that he received some inside information, and he had heard that Kentucky had good news coming. We could expect a boom today. And I guess the day's not over yet, but I still haven't. I keep checking Twitter, just waiting for me able to announce a boom. I noticed that in Santos games, they only played backups in the first half, none in the second. I guess they have different philosophies over there. That kind of makes me think it's kind of like they're developing for another league. Like they're making sure everybody gets equal playing time. I might as well just draw them out of a hat. Hugo would be a great ad. A lot of people are saying they'd rather have Hugo and Momchilovich fill out our roster. A lot of Kentucky fans aren't wanting Ryan Hampton. I like Vokatitis. Is that a good possibility? I don't know. I was just listing a few names of bigs that are on the outside of the draft I think we should look at. Are they ones that put their name in the draft that would have to withdraw, Crash? Yeah, that's what I was saying, Gadget, that, I felt like when we did that 5-hour stream on Thursday and I was streaming from, what was it, 9:30 to 2:30 or 9 to 2, whatever we did, I felt like since that night it's been eerily quiet. Like I didn't hear nothing all weekend about any kind of Kentucky news or wasn't anybody tweeting anything. Of course, I know the Derby took place Saturday, and that probably a lot of the I know a lot of the KSR guys were at the Derby and probably just, maybe didn't pay attention to their phone or whatever. There just wasn't any news coming out about Kentucky on Saturday or Sunday. I didn't see anything. I was really expecting to have a stream Saturday or Sunday. Then when I saw no news, I thought I'd take that Sunday off because I was still dead tired from Thursday night. I went to sleep about 2:30 and I woke up at 6 o'clock ready to go to work. All right. So Crash says those guys would have to withdraw from the portal, which so like on the big draft board, they're ranked 55th and 57th. I'd take either one of those at those rankings. Not going to lie. I'd take either one. If we get a boom today, it means we overpaid for Santos. Not necessarily. I think that's also a pretty good theory, but I'm just saying things have been so quiet. I don't know what Kentucky's done the last few days. I wouldn't know who to expect a boom from. I know BYU's in the lead for the Croatian. Supposedly, if you listen to Trilly Donovan usually knows a little bit. He's not been 100% accurate recently, but he also said Jordan Burks had a whole list of schools, wanting him, and Kentucky wasn't on that list. So absolutely. Muhammad Faye played with Derek Willis. What did Derek Willis do last season? Give us a Derek Willis stat line, or what were his splits last year? I'd actually be disappointed if they got Hampton. That would mean they're out on most likely. Hampton's just one of those guys who claims to be a, Kentucky's his dream school, one of those types of kids, but right now, but it also mean he'd get a lot of playing time. Some of these kids value money and playing time over the school or winning. It was so sad to speak. Right. And that's the one thing I've learned. Kentucky doing a Zoom And when they leak, or not leak, but when, they put out a tweet that they're interested, that don't mean nothing to me anymore. A lot of the guys I'm seeing them say they were interested in, I'm not seeing them contact anything but a Zoom call. I don't really see anything. Willis averaged 6 and 4 and shot 38% from deep. Not bad. Not bad. Oh, I definitely agree with that. That's why, one show I said that I'd rather have Momchilovich than Stokes, and a couple people fired back. I even had a couple comments on rewatches where people were questioning my ball knowing ability because I said I'd rather have a guy that's proven in the NCAA than a freshman who's coming in that you don't know what's going to happen. I have faith in Pope and his coaching ability, but I have zero faith in his ability to recruit and get the big recruit. Now, I didn't know any of those guys in the first season, didn't know nothing about them. I trusted them that they fit the pieces. The pieces he recruited fit his system, and they did, and they had a good year. And then last year, I trusted him at the beginning because of this first year, and I was disappointed. So, I hear multiple people say, including the Toddcast says, let Pope cook. I see a lot of other people online saying, let Pope cook. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not going to really judge him until his roster's set and we start playing some games. I'm hoping with this new rule that they play some games this summer so we can actually get a feel. And one reason Kentucky may have backed off on Santos, I'm not 100% sure on this, but hasn't it been said that Santos is going to have to jump through some hoops to get eligible as far as academics? I mean, damn, the guy's 24. What's he got to do to be eligible? Has he got to pass written test? Owe right now is he's projected a second rounder. I saw. I think he's projected before Marino or right after Marino, from what I saw. I'd rather go with older players. That's just me. Well, I think I'd rather have honestly, I'd rather have a good mix. Cameron Huriendo. I've heard that name, but I couldn't tell you one thing about him. Hondo, is that how you pronounce his name? Hondo? I heard earlier today that it's not a guarantee that Marino comes back. I was afraid of that. Peanut, we talked a little bit earlier, and I know you've been on the stream a lot. Not just tonight. I'm talking about previous shows. It just seems to me that, like that Devin Williams from Florida Atlantic, like, why did we completely back off him? He's a center that's still available. It's like he's been not wasting, but like he's been waiting patiently. He's finally going on a visit to Arizona tomorrow, then North Carolina. But why did we back off him? He was a center that everybody seemed to like early on. 100%. 100%. He did take less money. Yeah, but I think he can make more money at Kentucky than he can make being a second rounder that's not a guaranteed contract. If we lost Marone, is that Jerome Morton? Or did you combine both his names? Or are you talking about Marino? That would definitely be a death blow, Marino. You want me to look up the draft notes on him, or are you going to give them to us? He's a powerful dunker with great bounce who loves to get downhill and attack the rim. He's a strong and powerful athlete who plays above the rim with ease. Sounds pretty good to me for a backup center. Two different positions on Hondo and Hugo. Hondo's a center. I'm assuming if Crash is still talking about centers in the portal that we could potentially be looking at. He's a solid frame and can play through contact, doesn't have ideal height for a big man, but makes up for it with his strength and leaping ability, runs the floor well, and has a good feel for filling the lane and making himself available to finish plays. Isn't much of a ball handler at this point, but shows an occasional flash. If we lose Malachi, we'll not be watching Kentucky basketball this year. I'm not going to make a bold statement like that, because if I said a bold statement like that, then I'd have to stick to it. So I'd rather not say anything like that just so I don't have to stick to it. Right. I'm with you, Jake. I'm with you. I don't want to lose him either. The Reds are 1-6 against the Central. 1-5 against the Pirates. 0-1 against the Cubbies. I really think with Marino, I think the growth we saw him make from the beginning of the season to the end, I think he's going to make that big of a jump or more this next season. It'd really hurt to lose him. I don't want to have – I think Crash said it earlier. If we have to rely on Potter for more than 8 minutes, we're in trouble. He's got way too much to gain by coming back. I agree with that. Lottery pick, a lot more money. I agree. Good night, BB, and let Pope cook. Good night, my man. I'm getting off here in 12 minutes. You're all not talking me into another 2 o'clocker. I still think it's undercooked, John Boy. We ain't got anything yet. I think he forgot to turn on the stove. Didn't preheat the oven or something. I guess, early on we'll give Potter a chance. And, I'm sure against some of the non-conference opponents we play, it just seems to me that I don't know. I think Potter can step out and hit a shot or two, but I don't know. I guess I'm just not sold on him. No, I agree with that 100%. And I'm a Pope fan. I'm not going to tell you I agree with everything he does, but I wanted to work with Pope because I know what his passion is. I know he deeply cares for Kentucky, the state, the university, the kids. I want it to work out. It hasn't. I know. I think we're going to have to if we can defend it. Speaking of Vandy, wonder where Vandy Chris is. I haven't seen him tonight. I really hope Noah develops this year. If you look at his overall stats this year, he really wasn't as bad as it seemed. He just didn't knock down that big shot, Jake, when all we heard all season was how he may be the best shooter I've ever seen. He just didn't. I look for the Tanner kid from Vandy to withdraw from the portal, although I've seen a lot of people say he'll probably stay in, but I just didn't know. But there's no doubt, I mean, we're falling behind when it comes to the portal. Yeah, I mean, if you look at his record against top 15 teams, I mean, I think the thing that's sticking out in everybody's mind right now, though, is just how Iowa State just blew us out. It wasn't even a game. It was embarrassing for Kentucky to get beat like that in the NCAA tournament. If you're talking about Noah, I can tell you the one thing I was impressed about with Noah was his rebounding ability. I thought he rebounded the ball well in the SEC, even against bigger, stronger guys. I just worry about his athleticism, I don't know. There's a lot of things I worry about with Potter. But, I mean, we'll see. He got a lot of open looks last year and just didn't cash in. I don't want I remember when they said that in the huddle, and I just remember the backlash on Twitter, and I'm like, come on, guys, read the room. Read the room. You know the fan base is struggling right now, and you're going in the huddle, and you're not saying win or Kentucky. All you're saying is touch money. That's funny. Tanner from Vandy is currently 65th in mocks. Yeah, that's kind of what I thought. But I saw two different people today, and I don't know if they were Vandy people, national people, who they were, but they had the blue check, which I know anybody can pay for the had the blue check mark on Twitter. But they both said it was on different threads too that they expected him to stay in the draft, which could be a huge mistake because Vandy would give him a lot of money to come back. He'd make a lot of money. I'd say his NIL money, his endorsements, everything. John Boy, I've been wanting to play this sound, so I'm going to keep your when I read that, here's what popped into my mind, okay? Duh. Let me turn it up. I don't know if y'all could hear that. So Noah, if he can start making shots, he would get way more playing time. Duh. Duh. Yeah, SEC teams and coaches are really strong and do a really good job. I noticed last year through, pick and rolls or just isolation type sets to where they found the way to get the ball into people's hands against Noah in advantageous situations. And Noah's just a Kentucky kid. He's going to work his butt off. He takes pride in wearing the blue and white. I'm glad he's on the team. But I think if we have to look for him to be a major contributor all year long, I don't think it sits well for us. I don't think he can shoot much worse just because I know what kind of shooter he is. I Googled touch money after that, and it's actually slang in the basketball world for good shooting. I can't believe everyone ran with that. Guess they just had it out for Kentucky. That's exactly what it was, Peanut. They were mad, and they wanted to have the excuse that, they're getting paid big bucks now to play, and they ought to be focused on winning and playing basketball games. They shouldn't be focused on money and getting to the league. And, and they didn't take the time to research it themselves. Yeah, Kentucky kid. You're right. And that's why, you know what, Jake, and that comment you just made right there, is the whole reason why I was glad Travis Perry didn't come back. That's the whole reason why. Because I thought he got some unnecessary. I mean, they booed him something awful. And I know at Ole Miss, he's the enemy. Don't get me wrong. But I think he's taking some unnecessary hate from us too. Honestly, I bet a lot of it was trolls, not legit UK fans. Possibly. But have you noticed, though? It seems like the homegrown Kentucky kids are the ones who take some of the worst hate. Zoom owned Shellstad when they played each other. I didn't watch the tape. I know they played in the same conference, but I didn't go back and watch it. Also, when Chandler was selling hats after the Mizzou loss, he was fulfilling a contractual obligation. He was told to do that after the game. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't pile on him for it, but I don't remember reading that or anything. And, they're good at that. And not only KSR, but a lot of the media. It's kind of like KSR is not the only ones. I do know that I don't listen to them as frequently now as I used to. One, during school is kind of hard from 10 to 12 for me to listen. But the one thing I do appreciate about KSR is they're fans like we are. Matt Jones just has a large platform to voice his frustrations and to celebrate his, things that make him happy. He's also a very good fan when things are going well, but things haven't gone well here for a while. And he does have a large fan base and platform, but he's made a living out of reporting Kentucky news, good or bad. And, no, I've heard about that Donkfish, but I don't really know what the actual. I've had arguments with Matt Jones before through direct message, and Matt's actually, of course, he's a lawyer, so his ability to argue is a lot greater than mine. But he's made me see things differently several times about some of his tweets and things that I felt like he tweeted just to get attention or just to get interactions or engagements. But I like him. I just don't listen to him much anymore. Are y'all? But you still talking about the Colin Chandler? Well, even if he didn't give his name, but if he came back later and apologized and corrected it, I don't know what more you can ask for, honestly. But I do know that I do feel like KSR is taking a lot of hate right now. And I just saw some bluegrass lady, I think her name was on Twitter, some bluegrass lady was giving Matt Jones hell just a minute ago on Twitter for something. I don't even remember what it was. But as a Peanut, let me ask you a question. If you allow some radio host to control your mind, is that a him problem or is that a you problem? I was trying to find it, but I can't really find it right now. I can't find it, but she basically was saying something along the lines of accusing Matt Jones for the hate that the Kentucky team, Coach Pope, and the players, fans, everybody's receiving was Matt Jones's fault. And I think it resonates with the fans, and it's a product of what a lot of fans are already feeling, because I believe Matt to be a fan, and he's feeling the same thing. I don't think Matt's website, Matt's things, he has alluded sometimes that when UK football and basketball aren't well, the bar doesn't do as well. And, that's his livelihood. That's his business. I mean, I've seen people out there say that Matt Jones thinks or wants Kentucky to play bad or do bad, so he'll have a radio show and something to gripe about. I think it's a complete opposite. Jones has a lot of influence, be it good or bad. He should understand that and move accordingly. Oh, I think he definitely understands it. I mean, I remember when Matt spoke about how UK used to call him for input on hiring a new coach. He's definitely, I don't think he's got the same pull he once had. I think the university has kind of backed away from KSR a little bit. Yeah, I don't agree with this statement either. Peanut, I love you, and you're great on the show, but we're gonna have to disagree on that statement. But that's okay. I like the fact that disagree. I don't think so either. I mean, I think Matt would love it for a Kentucky guy like Pope to succeed here at Kentucky. But I think it's also his job as the largest radio station in the state, one of the more listened to radio stations across the nation. Definitely for his time slot. I think he also has an obligation to report what's good and bad. Hell, if you remember, Peanut, that guy came in here and got mad at me last week for asking if the Kentucky was on life support. He got pissed about it. I use TH. I see right through to their objectives. And it's okay to agree to disagree. I don't think Matt wants to fire anybody or get anybody fired. Well, if you remember, the same type stuff happened with Tubby. It was just time for a change, time to move on. I wish I had a chance to listen to it. I don't. Sometimes I listen to it when I'm going to sleep at night. I'll turn on the radio show and listen to it. But I'll be honest with you, I love listening to it a lot more when I think it's going to be a bad day than when it's a good day. I listen to the post-game show on good days, but I love the radio show the next day after a big loss or whatever, because I love hearing the callers call in. We need to get a pep talk from Chester. He needs to call in. Cal's falling out with boosters and administration is what did him in. I believe it's the main reason for him leaving. Yeah, I think it had a lot to do with it. I think the boosters weren't going to give any money. I think a few of the big boosters had said that they're cutting it off. I agree, and I think Cal even said it, and I think he believed it when he said it that they need another voice. I think it was definitely. I think Cal stayed a couple of years too long. But all right, guys, it's 3 hours in. It's 12 o'clock. I got to get to sleep. I'd love to stay on here more. I'll probably try to do another podcast maybe Thursday evening. Tomorrow, if we get a boom, I'll do one tomorrow night if we get a boom, just to kind of look over the player, who it was, kind of, evaluate them from our standpoint. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thanks for coming by. Before you leave, make sure you like it. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. And hopefully next time we can get a show, get a little bit more followers up. I'll pay attention to my thumbnail or get my viewers up. We usually get over 100. We didn't get there today. Live viewers, that is. But with that being said, I won't focus on the Kentucky Derby next show. Peace out, guys. Appreciate you all.